Hey everyone, it's Sarah from Sassy Reads, and today I'm going to be talking about some of the books that I read in 2018. I'm still going through the books that I read in 2018, so this is going to take a while because as of, the end of 2018, read 121 books, which is fantastic. It's one of the best reading years I've ever had. So let's continue to talk about some of those books, because I actually want to, put my thoughts out there about these books. And I know, it may be a little annoying to still see those books, but you don't know what I've read, because this is the only medium where you'll find out, unless you follow me on Goodreads, or unless you follow my blog. But I rarely post reviews as I read books, because I'm #horrible reviewer, who has backlist reviews, but that's okay. So let's dive into some of the books. The first one that I read to start this off is Death Note Volume 1, Boredom by Sugumi Ohaba, and art by Takeshi Obata. So, it's Death Note. It was my first time reading the manga. I love the anime. If you don't know what Death Note's about, it follows a young student named Light Yagami, who is top of his class. He is incredibly sophisticated, incredibly intelligent, kind of almost mastermind, and he's a young student, and he is always incredibly bored. Until one day, he is looking outside of his classroom window, and he sees a notebook fall onto the ground, and he goes outside, and he picks it up, and it has the word Death Note on it, and it has instructions on how to use the Death Note written in English. And as the story unfolds, we encounter Light conquering his boredom as he continues to write names of people down in the Death Note. And if you couldn't, infer that the Death Note kills you, once your name is written down, you will die. There's, of course, stipulations to this. Exactly how it's done. Your face has to be in the person's mind, so you can't kill someone if you don't know the person, or at least have an image of them. And it can be specified or unspecified. If it's unspecified, they will die of a heart attack, but there has to be a window of time. And if you've seen the anime, then you know Light can also, he's a mastermind, he's incredibly manipulative, quite sociopathic, so this means that he is able to manipulate even the rules of the Death Note to fit in the confines of his own agenda. And Light's agenda is very twisted. He ends up meeting Ryuk, who is the Shinigami, which is a death god who dropped the Death Note into the world, and he was looking to conquer his own boredom and spice things up. And then we also follow the Japanese police force, whose Light's father is head of, as well as L, a private investigator who is looking to take down Kira, which is the name that is given to this anonymous killer who is killing all of Japanese criminals, as well as criminals in general. And so this is the story. It's super great. I love Death Note. I think Death Note is one of the most well-written and suspenseful ideas out there. It's a very original concept. It's creepy. It's fascinating. I love Death Note. So, of course, I gave this 5 stars. I highly recommend it. I do plan on continuing with the manga, especially since I watched all the anime, so, I know what happens. But it's so fun to go back to the very beginning after you know what the end is, because it's rewatching just the downfall of somebody. It's so captivating and just gross and unsettling. It's very unsettling. This is a very unsettling story. So yeah, definitely it's darker. The art is really your basic art. It's very reflective of the anime, so if you love the anime's art, the art is like that as well. So yes, I definitely recommend Death Note Volume 1. Then the next audiobook that I listened to is called The Sun Does Shine, How I Found Life and Freedom on Death Row by Anthony Ray Hinton. I absolutely adore this novel. It follows Anthony Ray Hinton, who is a man accused of a crime that he did not commit. He has been on death row for like 23 years before he eventually gets out. Spoiler, it's nonfiction. He's writing this, he got out. But it's fantastic because we get to see the injustice of America's crime system, the politics behind prison, as well as the, social and oppression of black men in our society. And I love his story. Anthony Ray Hinton has such a prolific and inspiring outlook on life, and I don't know if I myself would feel the same way that he does. But it's all okay, so I'm pretty sure he talks about Paul the Apostle in this novel, and I'm much reminded of Paul the Apostle when thinking of Anthony Ray Hinton, because Paul the Apostle was like always in prison, always like facing the possibility of being stoned. I remember like at one point in the Bible he's like hiding from people as they're like looking to stone him, and he's like kind of like peeking out of the gates. Anthony Ray Hinton is a lot like that, because Paul always is like about perseverance and trusting in the Lord, and Anthony Ray Hinton is like that, but also he's like obviously feeling very sorrowful, and like there is no hope to be found because he's like, I'm still in this prison and it's been 23 years for a crime I didn't commit. So yeah, it's a heart-wrenching one. The Sun Does Shine is a nonfiction novel that I highly recommend. I talked about it in one of my social justice classes because I was like, this is one of those topics that if you're interested in, here's a great perspective from an inside look. We can't just talk about statistics and then completely discredit the own individual, and this individual's account mirrors the statistics, so it's even more profound, and it's such a great novel. I highly recommend it. The next book that I read is Bellwether by Susanna Kearsley. Susanna Kearsley is like a hot name in the historical romance or historical fiction department. I think she's also pretty well known for like hints of magical realism. This story, Bellwether, follows Charlie, who is a museum curator, which is a really interesting job, of a small museum that had once been a mansion, which was called Bellwether, and it is haunted. And there's a old town story about the youngest wild daughter and her French-Canadian lover who ends up being shot. It's one of those stories. It's supposed to be tragic with a hint of paranormal in it. And I was like, ooh, I've been wanting to read a Susanna Kearsley novel forever, because if you love Outlander, she's highly recommended. Well, I have fallen out of love with Outlander just because I don't like the direction the series took. As of book 5, that's where I started to just be like, nope. Book 4 was where it really started to get iffy for me, but I still enjoyed it. But Bellwether is quite a lot like that, only though so boring, like incredibly boring. I gave this book 2 stars. 2 stars. It's not for me. Nothing about it is really redeeming quality-wise. It's incredibly... It tries to be atmospheric, but it fails because it's so boring, and the characters are not gripping. The story itself is just subpar. I don't really care. The only interesting thing was that we're like interacting with French-Canadian people, which is very rare in fiction, so I was incredibly interested in that. That aspect was fascinating, which is why I gave it 2 stars, because I did really enjoy like the flashback parts, but even then those were boring. So yeah, I have a review for this, and I will leave it linked down below. You can go check out my thoughts on it. Yeah, thanks NetGalley for providing me a copy of this, but it was not for me. I do plan to read some more Susanna Kearsley in hopes that she will be for me. The last book I'm going to talk about is Prince Caspian by C.S. Lewis, which is the second in publication order in the Chronicles of Narnia series, and I'm reading it in publication order, so yeah. It's not chronological, but it's publication, and that's what I'm going by, publication. This one I gave 4.25 stars. It follows the Pevensies again, and we're back in a different time period where humans have invaded Narnia, and basically all of the magical creatures that have inhabited there are spat upon. I enjoyed it, didn't love it. I don't have much to say about Prince Caspian. hopefully the next book is better. So yeah, Death Note is the one that I recommend the most. Let me know down below in the comments what are your thoughts.